Hello everyone! So for a while I was contemplating on doing a bouncer guide, however I wasn't sure how I was going to do it until recently. With a bit of deliberation I found a way to do so, and so in this guide I'll be talking about how to play bouncer, well, specifically soaring blades with jet boots as utility. This guide will be broken up into a few parts, which are skill tree, custom techniques, mechanics and cooldowns, photon arts and photon blasts, applications of photon arts in bossing and in mobbing, specific gameplay for major suppression targets, and probably a few other things here and there. Now, with that in mind, pretty much everything I cover in this guide is my own information as well as personal experience and research. The bouncer community can be difficult to talk to at times, and I'd rather not get crucified, so that's just how it is. I'll try to keep numbers out of this as much as possible to make things as simple as possible for everyone. No promises though, you've been warned. So let's start from the basics. Bouncer's skill tree has a lot of important skills. If you want to make the most out of your skill points, keep in mind you can only really devote 1 SP towards a technique mechanic at any given time. In most situations, Megid Sphere is probably the best choice overall because holy moly is T2 Megid strong. More on that later however. Simply take 2 out of 3 points into Decline Gelin effect and you can grab pretty much everything you need to play Bouncer effectively. So let's talk about specifics. Bouncer's biggest selling points are its ability to make elemental and physical downs much easier to occur. Using PAs on either weapon will cause a debuff to be inflicted on the enemy, which will increase the more you hit the enemy with PAs. Soaring Blades increases physical decline and boosts elemental decline. On top of this, Bouncers gain increased damage as well as resistance to damage by destroying parts on enemies. As far as the weapons itself goes, Soaring Blade's skill tree mainly focuses on Photon Blades. You've got Blade Frantic, which deals extra damage while active and restores PP, Blade Arts Parry, which allows you to parry attacks during Photon Arts, Pinion Blade, which is an insanely strong cooldown part of your main gameplay loop, and Blades Arts Alternation, which will allow you to shift into a different PA during a PA. For jet boots, you've got Technique Mechanics, or for the sake of simplicity for this guide, Megid Sphere. There is also Jet Intensity as single target hit, which requires it going through a lot of single hits to get to one giant big hit. Fresh Drive, which allows you to gap close with techniques. Jet Sweep Jolt, a jet boot's cooldown, also a part of the main loop, and Element Set, which allows you to change your jet boot's element. With the skill tree out of the way, let's now talk about custom techniques. These are basically the NGS equivalent of crafted photon arts from base PSO2. I'll try and explain all the relevant ones, but for the average player, you really only need to use ones which work best for general use. First off, we have Soaring Blades. Rampaging here is the first custom technique we will talk about. If you mainly use boots, I'll say just grab Type 2 as that increases damage on downs. If you mainly play Soaring Blades, however, take Type 3 as that will increase the attack speed of Harrier at the cost of -10 potency until you shift into a different PA. In most cases, however, you won't need to shift into another PA, as even with the reduced damage, it's still pretty sizable DPS increase due to the attack speed up. If you take Type 2, Roaring Pheasant, you can shift into that when the enemy is down after the first 2 hits, or before the Blade Rain portion of Harrier. There are also niche cases for shifting into Destructive Stork if you need to end the PA early, but it's super niche. Next up, we have Roaring Pheasant. All 3 versions of Roaring Pheasant have their uses. If you want the general use version, take Type 2. Type 2 extends the duration of shifted Roaring Pheasant by essentially doubling the amount of hits it usually does. This will make the shifted version a good option on completely stationary targets where you can land all hits, for example a broken or down enemy. Type 1 Pheasant is mainly used due to how the unshifted version of the PA has an increased duration. This is primarily used for pre-fires, or in other words something you use before you initially approach or hit the target. This isn't the first time you'll be hearing this term in this guide, so make sure you pay attention. Finally, Type 3 Pheasant is, in my experience, a bit more niche. In my case, I really only started using this for Dark Souls Dalian, as it is optimal to use Unshifted Pheasant T3 without walking onto puppets. This version builds Pinion Gauge faster, and that's pretty much all there is to it. With Soaring Blades out of the way, let's go into Jet Boots custom techs. First, we have Fierce Wave. There's only one version of Fierce Wave worth using, and that's Type 2. Type 2 Fierce Wave extends the total number of ticks the PA does at the cost of dealing slightly less damage. The benefit to this is that if all ticks of Fierce Wave T2 connect, Jet Sweep Jolt's Gauge will be almost completely filled. Using a single Jet Boost PA like Surging Impulse or Spinning Gust will fill the Gauge afterwards. Extended Fierce Wave can also yield up to 2 Megid Spheres, needing to use T2 Megid. Next we have Violent Gale. You'll be using Type 2 Violent Heal because it yields larger Jet Sweep Jolt gains. This PA, as a result, is situationally useful for filling up the gauge when you cannot fit the full PA, or you just need to top off the Jet Sweep Jolt gauge after a single Fierce Wave. Finally, we have Type 2 Megaed. Type 2 is taken because building up Megaed spheres by using Jet Boots Photon Art strengthens the technique. By building up orbs mainly with Fierce Wave and Surging Impulse, you will occasionally fire off strong techniques between Soaring Blade PAs or on downs. Megaed T2 travels a relatively far distance, and when it comes into contact with an enemy, it will slowly deal damage as it passes by the target. With custom techniques out of the way, let's talk about Blade Art's Parry Sidestep, or BAPS, as well as go over pre-fires a bit more. Blade Art's Parry Sidestep is one of the main mechanics or quirks of Soaring Blades. Essentially, when you counter an attack with the weapon action in the middle of a Photon Art, you will have a split second to perform a sidestep counter immediately afterwards. Doing this will allow you to counter twice off of one attack, usually off of Pheasant, as the unshifted version of it has a long animation without animation lock, giving you ample time to use BAPS with it. With that being said, in many cases, as the Bouncer rework, it is in most cases better to use BAP, alongside Rampaging Harrier over BAPS. Both Darkfall's Solace in its second phase and Malignant Darkfall's Aegis were prime examples of fights where you have quite a few chances to use BAP due to how they give you plenty of time to set up Roaring Pheasant before the attack connects with you. With that in mind, you can still BAPS with Rampaging Harrier, however timing is much more strict. So I really recommend doing that on attacks with lingering hitboxes. An example of this is where you can BAPS with Harrier would be against Zelvin, as practically all of its attacks have lingering hitboxes. Knowing when to BAPS and when to BAP for each boss encounter is an important part of pushing out as many damage possible on Soaring Blades. We've talked about BAPS and sidestep counters, but let's talk about the weapon action for Soaring Blades. As of the rework, the weapon action is now more in line with base PSO2 Soaring Blades weapon action, in which you perform a glide in the direction you are pressing. It also functions as a counter, which you can use whenever you can't set up a Rampaging Harrier in time to use BAP. Similar to the sidestep counter, it also restores PP upon hit, and it activates Photon Blades when under Blade Fantic, one of the Soaring Blades cooldowns. Now, if I haven't caused you to die from boredom just yet after scratching the surface of things, we can now go on to cooldowns. For cooldowns, we have Blade Fantic, a cooldown which adds additional Photon Blades, which restore PP to all Soaring Blade, PA, and weapon action counter. But we also have Jet Sweep Jolt, and one of the best parts of playing Soaring Blades, Full Connect. No, wait, wrong game, I meant Pinion Blade. Let's go into these, but essentially, in a nutshell, these are all ways of dealing additional damage between Photon Arts. Blade Fantic, as mentioned a few times in this video, is a cooldown which adds Photon Blades to Photon Arts, Pinion Blade, and a weapon action counter. These Photon Blades will activate twice for the duration of a whole Photon Art or Pinion Blade, dealing passable damage and restoring PP at the same time. This effect lasts for 30 seconds before going off cooldown for 90 seconds. Next we have Jet Sweep Jolt. Jet Sweep Jolt is a cooldown which deals damage, however, unlike Blade Fantic, it requires you to build gauge up to use it. In order to build this gauge, you need to use Jet Boots attacks such as Photon Arts. Now, I know what you're saying, but Est, I thought this is mainly about Soaring Blades, why do you have to use Jet Boots? Well, first off, shut up, please don't kill me. And second, in order to play Soaring Blades optimally, you do need to actually use Jet Boots. So, use it. Seriously, if you don't, I know what ship you live on. Jokes aside, the best and most simple way of building this gauge up is from Type 2 Fierce Wave and Surging Impulse. However, PAs such as Spinning Gust or Type 2 Violent Gale can also be used to fill in the blanks if you need to use one PA to fill the gauge. In most cases, you want to use Type 2 Fierce Wave. However, in most cases, you will want to use Type 2 Fierce Wave. However, because it's just outright the best way of building Jet Sweep Jolt gauge, keep that in mind. You can usually fit one in assuming the boss is attacking you at the moment. While you can also build gauge with Jet Boots Intensity, it is generally not a good way to build gauge in most situations. Finally, for cooldowns, we have Bouncer's most important way of dealing big damage, Pinion Blade. Pinion Blade, similar to Jet Sweep Jolt, requires you to build a gauge by using Soaring Blade's actions. Upon filling the gauge, you will gain access to an attacker which has a whopping 2,600 potency. While Pinion Blade has a slow animation, it deals massive damage, and aside from unblockable attacks, you are immune to damage for its duration as well. Oh, and the best part is that Pinion Blade restores PP upon hit, making it a good source of damage as well as PP recovery. Make sure to use this off cooldown because it plays into a pretty sizable role in Soaring Blade's overall damage. A missed Pinion Blade is a lot of damage gone. Pretty straightforward, right? At this point we've covered some pretty good ground, but let's talk about Photon Arts Bouncer has. We've got 8 to cover, but outside of Soaring Blades, a lot can be considered utility usage with the exception of Fierce Wave, which is actually used quite a lot now. Also, since Bouncer can use techniques thanks to the boots, it gives us access to one of the strongest custom techniques we discussed earlier, Megi Type 2. So let's get into that, shall we? The soaring blades we've got 4 PAs as of any class in NGS: Rampaging Harrier, Roaring Pheasant, Raving Falcon, and Destructive Stork. Each PA has its own uses and some more than others. So please make custom Destructive Stork actually more worth using in the future. First off, we have Unshifted Rampaging Harrier as our main single target Photon arm. In pretty much every bossing instance, you'll be using this PA as our primary damage source. It has a long animation which is shortened slightly by custom free Harrier, and you can use Blade Art's parry multiple times as long as you land each parry for the duration of its animation. Upon shifting by holding down the PA, you will fire out some Photon Blades, which ends the PA faster. Next is Roaring Pheasant. The unshifted version is typically used for pre-fires as stated earlier on due to how it travels a pretty sizable distance. The final hit of Roaring Pheasant is a strong single hit, so the PA should be used when you're about to hit the target. The final hit of Roaring Pheasant is a strong single hit, so the PA should be timed when used for pre-fires so that when the final hit lands, it will be on the target itself. The unshifted version, as stated before, is the best way of setting up BAPs. Shifted Roaring Pheasant mostly goes unused. However, Custom 2 Roaring Pheasant is a solid use of Shifted Pheasant on stationary enemies that are not moving. Destructive Stork is a bit of a weird PA to use. Simply put, it's intended to be a Soaring Blades mobbing PA. The unshifted version has a bunch of blades circle around you in a circular motion, and you can move from starting point of the PA quite a bit. Because you move during this, it can be difficult to use, however. Shifted Stork is commonly used to shift out a Rampaging Harrier before a sword raid portion, assuming you need to end the PA early. Finally, we have Raving Falcon. This PA works as a ranged damage PA that allows you to attack from afar. However, in order for Raving Falcon to be semi-useful in a bossing situation, you have to be able to counter with BAP or need some specific niche case like Darkfall's Dallium, which I'll get into later. The shifted version functions as a gap closer, which could be nice to use assuming the enemy moves away while you're in the middle of a Raging Harrier, for example. With Soaring Blades out of the way, we have Jet Boot. But to save everyone who's watching this' sanity, and my own, I'll just go over them briefly with the exception of Fierce Wave. Fierce Wave is, as a Soaring Blades bouncer, extremely important. With Custom 2 Fierce Wave, holding down the PA so it plays out the entire animation will pretty much completely fill up the Jet Sweep Jolt Gauge each time you use it. This means that whenever there's downtime between attacks you need to fill up a gauge, you can build up Jolt with the one use of Fierce Wave, and maybe a Surging Impulse here or there. This is not only free damage, but Fierce Wave is a solid source of building up Megi spheres for Megi Type 2. Surging Impulse is another useful PA as it allows you to slowly build up Jet Sweep Gauge while it's active. If there are moments where you can't attack the boss or pre-fire or anything else, this is a solid PA to use. Thus, it's primarily used as a movement PA with Soaring Blades in mind. The initial part of the PA can be cancelled out and is faster than simply dashing. It does consume PP however, but if you need to move fast in a short time, this works well. Violent Gale is a PA on boots mostly useful for building Jolt Gauge alongside Fierce Wave. However, it can really only be used in niche situations, making it situationally useful for when you have a short time to attack something, but you want to sneak in an initial attack to build Jolt Gauge. This technically isn't true if you mainly use Jet Boots as the main weapon, however, but since this guide focuses on Soaring Blades, that's where it gets its use. Last but not least, let's get into techniques, or just maybe one, because I know hardly anything about techniques aside from Megid. I'm so good at this game. Did I mention I forgot to take Megid Sphere on my skill tree for the first few times I was using it in my videos? Seriously, I'm truly an amazing player. Simply put, Megi Type 2 is a really strong tool in Bouncer's kit. Even when hitting enemies not weak to dark, it deals around 480 DPS. That is a lot of DPS for a technique on a non-dark weak enemy. Simply build Megid Spheres with Fierce Wave and Surging Impulse, and charge up Megid when you have the time between attacks, and fire it off, with 2 to 3 orbs built up. It can also be used to hit Dallium when your puppet goes invuln, while also building up orbs as it travels quite a far distance. So that only took like forever to talk about, but we're still not done yet. Nope. Let's touch upon Photon Blasts. Now, there really isn't much to talk about though, but if it wasn't obvious, Bouncer has 2 Photon Blasts, Soaring Blades and Boots. In most situations, it's better to use the Jet Boots PB due to how it has a quicker animation and piercing qualities compared to Soaring Blades, which is a really long animation. The pierce effect that Boots PB has allows you to hit multiple enemies in its path, since the Photon Blast itself travels. As an added bonus, it will fully charge your Jet Sweep Jolt Gauge, giving you additional damage from Jet Sweep Jolt. Overall, pick that PB in most situations. So, now we know what everything does on Bouncer, and we can all stop watching this video, right? Well, there's still some other things left to go into. I guess really quick, you're probably wondering, well, why soaring blades? Well, simply put, soaring blades are arguably one of the strongest weapons in NGS. This was the case prior to rework as well, however. It was just more difficult to play due to how BAP worked, as well as how Blade Frantic worked differently, as well as the weapon action itself. There's also Encore Jump to take into consideration, which has been promptly nerfed. Whether or not you enjoyed how Soaring Blades played prior or how it plays now is an entirely different discussion overall, but personally I think how Soaring Blades are now is really fun. It's just overall a weapon with a lot of tools at its disposal for dealing additional damage, and it can use jet boots to add to that further. Having mechanics like BAPs to work with and just strong options for custom techniques are part of why it's one of the strongest weapons in NGS. It's also for these reasons that I mostly use jet boots for utility and primarily play Soaring Blades. In general, boots do not feel very fun to play for me, and with my experience, they don't feel that strong either compared to Soaring Blades do. Now, I'm sure everyone's attention span is shot by now thanks to my video, and you probably want to go back to watching Skibbity or Gushing Grannies or their ERP sessions or whatever the heck people are into these days. Let's round this off with some gameplay specific loops with major suppression targets as well. Or well, that's what I would say if I didn't already cover the majority of those things already. The only thing that needs to be talked about a bit is Dalian, since optimal gameplay in Dalian has changed quite a bit since release. That being said, if you're coming here after June 5th when level 90 cap comes out, I'm pretty sure you don't need to do most of these things, since we'll just power creep the fight to the point where it won't be needed anymore. Essentially, optimal Dalian requires Type 3 Roaring Pheasant. This is used in place of Type 3 Rampaging Harrier during the Fragment phase. Basically, you don't use Lock-On and use Roaring Pheasant against the Fragment using BAP and BAPs as required. It's more optimal to do this, and for building Pinion Gauge. This also has the added bonus of being much easier to set up fierce waves between Fragment attacks to build up Jet Sweep Jolt. During the 4th Fragment split, you also use Unshifted Raving Falcon at the edge of Fragment's aggro range to force it into using ranged attacks. Being at the edge of the Fragment's aggro range also apparently stops its AI from going for the attack where it can't be damaged, which can help with saving time. You just need to make sure you counter all the incoming range attacks with BAP. That's basically the most notable parts of a Dalian fight on Bouncer. I won't go into optimal DPS points to be at or anything, but assuming you have best in slot, you should have around 11 to 12k DPS or higher in Darkfold's Dalian, at least in a group setting. Darkfold's Solus R2 also exists, but as of the making of this video it isn't out yet, but I'm pretty sure the strats won't be very different from how they were for the original format. I've got a solo on it, just watch it, and I'm sure if you follow that and just adjust to fit the new attacks and all the changes to Bouncer since then, you'll be fine. Chances are I'll have a video up of that fight day 1 of a clear, and you can use it as a base reference. It'll probably be pretty sloppy knowing how I am. And with that, we've gone over pretty much everything there is about Bouncer. I hope. Well, if there's anything I missed, feel free to nag me in the comment section and I'll give you an answer. Personally, I don't want to drag this out further because as of writing my script, I'm pretty sure this video is going to be like 20 minutes or close to that, and that's a lot of words to take in for pretty much anyone. Overall, Bouncer is a great class that's fun to play. I do wish boots were better, but at least Soaring Blades is a fantastic weapon to play. I'm pretty much all out of stuff to talk about, so I hope someone can at least gain something from this. I'm pretty sure I'll get crucified over something I forgot to mention, because that's just how guides are.
Will you survive this? I am Steel, she who cuts through all! This is your end! Grand Cross! Welcome!
So, please go easy on me if you do. I'm capable of mistakes too. Take care everyone, and have a good day or night, or whatever time it is for you. Peace.